Morning YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Sunday the 13th of March 2016, preparing for the Outsiders and First Moondog.
Time now for Outsiders. I'm Barry Cassidy and you're not.
Thanks, Barry. Time now indeed for Outsiders. And joining me today are Kate Lawson, the Director of Writers Victoria, Professor Mark Gabbett, Executive Dean of the Faculty of Business and Economics at Macquarie University, and Trisha Jha, Policy Analyst at the Center for Independent Studies. Thank you all for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Negative gearing seems to be the topic du jour, with the government escalating its attack on Labour's policy. I don't know if you heard this. Here's Federal Cabinet Minister Peter Dutton.
Obviously, I think it's becoming pretty clear that this election will be about Labor's taxes and their proposals to whack a tax on housing. And if house prices go down and rents go up under Labor, then I think that is a pretty clear battle for us at the election, whenever it might be. And I think people now are starting to understand that Labor's proposal to reduce housing prices and increase rents will hit families and small businesses and cripple the economy.
The minister also said the economy will come to a shuddering halt and the stock market will, quote-unquote, crash under Labour's tax policies. The opposition has criticized this as an outlandish scare campaign. Mark, is this level of hyperbole going to become more common as we get closer to the election?
Yes, I think so. Unfortunately, negative gearing has always been a fairly complex component of the tax portfolio, and I don't think this is going to change. I think what's interesting in the current debate is that the coalition government hasn't really put any proposals forward at all, whereas Labor's gone straight in both booths. So I think there's a little bit of saber rattling from both sides, but I think this is going to get very, very technical, and I'm afraid everybody's going to be confused about the impact, the likely impact, the impact on prices, on rents, on the stock market, on housing availability, new houses, and so on. So it's not going to stop.
Trisha, will the election be fought on taxes? And if so, does the Conservative line that the ALP is fiscally irresponsible and incompetent, does that even resonate with voters still?
I think it would have to. I mean, I guess one of the main reasons why we saw such a huge swing in favour of Tony Abbott and the coalition at the 2013 election was because Labor had this reputation of being fiscally irresponsible and just being, completely incapable of managing the economy. I think since then it's become clearer that certain parts of what happened post GFC were definitely out of the government's hands. So a lot of the economy these days is definitely out of the hands of any government of any stripe whatsoever. But I think that still resonates with a lot of people. It's just what I think will have to change is that the government is going to have to respond in kind because, as Mark said, Labor has put their best foot forward in this circumstance.
So, just to all of you, which age group are any changes in negative gearing even going to affect? Is it something that's only particular to baby boomers, or do the Generation Y maybe, or do the millennials even have to worry about this at all?
Depends on who you are or what your situation is, I'm guessing, or which policy you're discussing. One of the huge problems that I have with Labor's policy is that because it includes grandfathering, which means everyone who's bought into investment property, the tax treatment of their property isn't going to change. It's whoever's coming after, and that includes my generation, so Generation Y. All I can see from this is a policy that will protect the investments of people who've already got them and yet pull the rug out from people who would like to have access to that same tool to build wealth.
Do you agree, Kate?
Yeah, and I think, as Mark said, it's such a confusing issue that people aren't going to be sure if it affects them or not. I think what's disappointing is that it seems like another election is going to be fed by three-word policy statements and scare campaigns like whack a tax on that.
Whack a tax. Yeah, that's a great T-shirt slogan right there. Labor's policy is limited to investments after 2017, though. It's just something that I feel like, how much of an impact can that even have?
Well, there's going to be, I think there's about 2 million taxpayers who declare some kind of rental income. There's about 1.3 million who've got some kind of negative gearing. So it's going to be distributed right across the economy. I think traditionally it's been seen as a relatively safe haven for, I guess, latter generations, probably the baby boomers. And it's always been a feature of investment portfolios, as far as I can see, for a long time in Australia. It is going to have an impact, though, and whatever they do, I mean, there's a 12 billion cost to the Treasury, I think, in 2013. So there's a lot at stake here. So, but if you look at other countries and how they've managed it, I think there are some opportunities to make this policy a little bit more amenable to today's environment, either quarantining losses or focusing on the capital gain reduction. But either way, it is going to impact quite a lot of people.
It does seem like one of those topics which is just slightly on the fringes and being made to be louder than it might actually warrant. I mean, do you think maybe if the election is still a few months away, if they are going to be held in June as is rumored, do you think both parties need to come up with bigger, stronger policies, make bolder decisions, or is this just one of those cases where we're all just going to keep waffling our way into just mild topics?
Well, it would certainly be nice to see some policy come out of the Liberal Party camp to as an opposition, a viable opposition to what they're now taking pot shots.
So are you saying that the glaring rhetoric is not enough?
No, and also, you know, it can be seen that the detail of something like the negative gearing tax is the smaller issue compared to the bigger picture issues of the housing crisis, both at the entry end and the exit end. And it'd be nice to see some of those more substantial topics debated in a more comprehensive way.
Trisha, do you think that'll even happen, or is that just a pipe dream at this point?
Well, I think one of the main reasons it won't happen is because so much of that is actually outside of the control of the federal government. I mean, they had the first homeowners grant, and that was one way that the federal government was tried to increase housing affordability, and they had just had the expected response of prices increased in a manner that was related to the amount of that. And whereas we know that housing supply is a huge one of the main reasons why housing is so expensive, whether it's to rent or to buy, and that is a policy that's really being made at state and local government level, and that's not something the feds can do anything about.
Mark, what sort of changes is a change in negative gearing likely to have an impact even on like the rental market?
That's a difficult one to answer. I mean, I wish I was an expert, because I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of demand for experts in negative gearing over the next few months. But I think there's lots of opportunity here to see some change. The question will be where they land. My guess is you're not going to see a huge amount of detail from either side at the minute. It's just too complicated, and the modelling, which they've done on the Labour proposal, will need to be reviewed, and of course the coalition proposals, when that comes up, will need to be reviewed. So I don't think we're going to see an election with much detail around this. It's going to be pretty much hype.
Based on my research online, at the very least, it seems like Mark might be the only non-expert on negative gearing in the whole country, because everyone else seems to just have a PhD in the subject, except for maybe myself and Mark right now. Who knows? Moving from negative gearing to positive drug testing. How's that for a segue? Tennis star Maria Sharapova is shedding sponsors after failing a meldonium drug test.
It's very important for you to understand that for 10 years, this medicine was not on WADA's ban list, and I had been legally taking the medicine for the past 10 years. But on January 1st, the rules had changed, and meldonium became a prohibited substance.
Remember, you can text in on 0418226576 to be part of the conversation, or tweet in at RN Sunday Extra, #ABCRN. Kate, do you think this is the case where Sharapova didn't know better, as she says? It's a mistake, an honest thing, or just a moral failure?
Oh, it's perhaps a combination of both. And forgive the pun, but it's not just about how we solve a problem like Maria. It's much more endemic than that. And Andy Murray queried how interesting it is that 55 top tennis players apparently have heart conditions that they're now saying that they take this medication to solve.
Is that a situation where, like, you see a funny word one day and then you see it everywhere? Maybe that's the situation, you know?
And I think you can certainly empathise for some, if it is indeed an ongoing health condition, you can empathise for what is something that's happened from an arbitrary and moving line that is the banned list. But surely, if it's your business, you make it your business to find out about these changes.
Trisha, Mark, are you all as skeptical as Kate?
I think I am. I mean, Maria is a large business in her own right, and to feel like she has to go through her emails and open up web pages and click and find information that's relevant to her professional sports business, I think it's pretty unbelievable. So there'll be hundreds of people there advising her, finding this stuff. She'll have professional coaches, she'll have people advising on nutrition and her health. So it's not really believable that she didn't know.
We're seeing this a lot more though, right? I mean, it has been for a while in America, especially in the sports over there. There's been a constant issue, and over now globally as well, we're seeing more and more cases of drugs in sports. AFL, cycling, sports have become a big business, and drugs seems to be kind of attaching itself to that business. Is this just a problem that's not going to go away?
I think one of the main issues is that authorities, whether it's WADA or whether it's, you know, more domestic agencies like ASADA or their equivalents in other countries, is that they're always going to be playing catch up. I mean, basically, and we've seen this, you can see this in the illegal drug market as well, the narcotics market, is that there's always going to be a new chemical compound and a new variation of something that just kind of, there's going to be people who are trying to push the envelope in every kind of circumstance. And I think we might be getting to the stage where, you know, there's not necessarily enough research done on the extent to which a given new drug actually does impact performance to the extent that you would expect that WADA or a similar agency would actually want to ban it. But it seems like they're just trying to take a kind of a very broad brush approach to try and include everything in the net. And I think that that's going to have more and more of an impact on all sorts of athletes as time goes on.
Well, I mean, they tried making an example of Lance Armstrong, for example. The reaction to his being found accurately guilty was pretty severe. It doesn't seem to have had any effect. It doesn't seem to have frightened people off the drugs at all, right?
Well, I guess the issue is always about, you know, the business end of it, which is the sponsorship. And, you know, I think there was some commentary which suggested that because, you know, Sharapova's game's been off a bit lately, and if she'd been in her prime, perhaps, you know, Porsche and whatever other sponsors that she's got at the moment wouldn't have been so quick to jump ship. But I guess it depends on the athlete, and I guess it depends on the sponsors as well.
That's something. Kate, you mentioned Andy Murray, for example. Like he's been all over this issue. In fact, he criticized one of Sharapova's sponsors, where he said, I believe Head, which is one of the racket makers, for saying they will stick with her and give her the benefit of the doubt. And he said that, you know, they should have dropped her automatically. And is that a fair reaction from him?
Well, I think, you know, all of the WADA is very clear that if it was negligence or if it was cheating, it doesn't matter. In either case, she should be suspended. And I think not only are we seeing this endemic use and increase of performance-enhancing drugs, there's also an endemic culture of trying to wriggle out of the consequences.
So here's my problem with the whole thing, right? And as Trisha just said as well, there's that whole aspect of the age issue, and you know, the tennis player or this athlete starts wearing down, and so they take drugs sometimes to kind of keep up against the younger athletes, and every generation of athletes gets better, and so there's that level of competition. Maybe we're not looking at the right solutions. Maybe the solution should be you should have age brackets within the matches. There should be the tennis world champion, the Wimbledon 30 to 40, and 50 to 60, things like that. Maybe you just legalize the drugs, everyone takes them, and the person with the best drugs wins. I mean, why? How many times are you going to have the same headline on our athletes and just children being disillusioned to find out yet another hero has fallen?
Okay, well, we're coming up on the upload limit. Apparently, Jonathan Greene is doing something else. At the very start of the show, old mate there said that budget restraints and staff cuts means that Jonathan Greene's job has been outsourced to a Pakistani. Pretty sure he was just having a joke at himself. Interesting to note that the Kangaroos didn't want to listen to a Pakistani. There you go. Back with the outsiders if they're going to appear.